From my perspective, the ones that are really good at what they do, they will embrace the tool completely, and they will realize that this is the way things are going to continue to move forward, similar to when the calculator started or when it was invented. People were like, okay, it's going to take all of our jobs. Obviously that didn't happen. We don't want kids to use it because they're going to forget how to do math. Maybe so, but they have a lot more skills that we didn't used to have during those times.
There's people predicting that within the next year, white collar work can either be reduced by 30% or enhanced by 30%. Or this is what they're predicting will happen. Either you argue that like, oh, you're going to cut labor force by 30% because of these tools, or you expect 30% more productivity.
Do I think Chat-GPT is going to change the world? No. Do I think the creation or the idea of Chat-GPT is going to change the world? Yes.
Okay, welcome to Digible Dudes podcast. I'm David.
I'm Reid.
Reid, we did start to get off track a little bit this year, but we're going to get back on track now.
Yep.
Meaning we already said that once this year. I think we only get to play that card 3 times.
It'd be ironic if we got any more off track, knowing that we just brought Erica over full time
Yeah.
to try and help, as well as hiring a podcasting platform.
Yeah.
So yeah, we better get back on track.
All right, cool. And we are here with
Victor, VP of Technology here at Digible.
There you go.
And fun fact, what is your real last name?
My real last name? Well, my real last name is Dozal, but the last name that I was born with is Gonzalez. And so what happened there, the story that I told Reid maybe 1 week ago, is that when I moved to the U.S. And I got my citizenship, they ask you, which last name do you want to keep? Because in Mexico, you have 2 last names, the father's last name and the mother's last name. But when you're in the U.S., you guys have all one last name. So they ask you, do you want to keep one? And I said, yeah, I'll keep Dozal. And I did that because it's easier to find me on Google with Dozal rather than Gonzalez, because there's a trillion Gonzalez out there. So that's the story of the change of last name.
Don't leave out the fun part about your driver's license.
Oh, yeah. So I've always, I don't know, I guess my personality is one where if you tell me that I can't do something, I'll pick my battle. But if you tell me that I can't do something, I'll fight like hell to show you that I can do it.
You think you pick your battles?
Sometimes. Sometimes I do it well, sometimes I don't. And so with my driver's license, when I was little or much younger, and everyone was coming up with fancy signatures, everyone would come up with like this cursive letter signature. And I was trying to come up with mine. And every time I try to come up with my signature, it never came out the same. And so I was like, what's something that I can do every single time? And it was my 3 initials with a smiley face at the end. And everyone told me that was ridiculous. And I'm like, just because you're saying it's ridiculous, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep doing it, which may sound immature, but it's just like a thing for myself. And so what I did is I just kept it all throughout my life. Right now, all my legal documents are exactly that. My initials with a smiley face. My license has the same thing. And if you guys know how the government works, there's some people in there that just, they're not used to seeing something, they'll fight with you just to make sure that you follow the rules. And so I almost had to threaten the DMV so that they would allow me to use the signature. And so they had to call a manager and let me use it. And now I have my signature with a smiley face in it on my driver's license. So
love it.
Fun fact.
Our fearless leader, tech leader.
One thing I want to go back to, then do you drop the 2 names when the grandchild is born, right? Because you wouldn't just keep adding names.
Yeah.
So
you drop. So usually in Mexico, and it's like Mexico is still like a very macho kind of country. And what happens is that men, when they have children, they still want to have a male just so that they can keep the last name going.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the woman's name usually ends up trailing off.
Yeah. So that's the same as the U.S. We just don't do the hyphenated thing.
Right.
Okay.
By the way, David, I showed Reid my signature. It's really ugly here, but there's the smiley face.
Oh, yes, I do see it. Yeah. Just go ahead and get doxxed.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's a good idea. Yeah.
Suddenly you'll lose a little bit more of your crypto.
Well, we had a quick minute to grab Victor when he was in town. So we grabbed him so that we could talk. I almost feel gross feeling. I was just saying this ahead of time, but I feel like everyone's talking about natural language generation these days. And then it feels like anybody that doesn't know us will just think that like, oh, yeah, we're
jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah, it's like if we would have been talking like crypto or something like 2 years ago. So I don't want to like come off that way, but we are talking about natural language, which is something we've been building for, I guess, 4 years that we've been working on it. However, obviously, this has become more into the public's attention because of Chat-GPT with both natural language processing and natural language generation. And then since you were in town, Victor, we said, hey, why don't we just quickly riff a bit on what's happening in the space, what will go right, what won't go right, and how we've been planning to use our NLG for some time. And some of that may be using some of these technologies off the shelf now, but I feel like there's a lot that we've learned as we've built our own that will help us if we do start to use, like, in certain situations, any of the things that are coming off the shelf these days. So, Reid, do you want to start with what the vision's been for us, and then we can kind of go into?
Yeah, I can. I think it's a fun little backstory. My own experience with NLG specifically, because we were only about a year into the company, and we were working on kind of those early stage Fiona features, and you had let me know that there was ways to automate scale the content, the recommendation explanations that we had mocked up. And so you had brought back, I think at the time it was Wordsmith, and they got acquired by Automated Insights, and they got acquired by Stats LLC. So there's still a really big player here, which will be interesting what their future looks like with now Chat-GPT crashing into this universe or into that picture. But it blew me away to hear from them as they were pitching us that all the insights in fantasy football are not from some nerd in his basement, that has studied like the sports almanac backwards and forwards, but that it was all automatically generated just based on data inputs, integrations, etc. And so that was one of those moments for me where I was just like, wow, think of all those applications. This is super exciting. And so we took it as far as we could. I'll say, like, with the existing platform that we were using, but then, enter Victor, and he's done this a few times, but just said, hey, if you give us enough time, resources, I think we could potentially build this ourselves. And so sure enough, we went down that path. I don't remember exactly how long it took before, we had kind of that, I guess, beta for Digible, but it was pretty good, pretty slick, and functioned. And so we transitioned off platform, went onto our own, and that led to some of the things that we're doing with Google Business Profile and Post, and we were also trying to demonstrate it, I think, with Facebook Marketplace before we ended up moving away from that opportunity. So we started to use some fair housing inside of that too, and that became kind of a big part of the fair housing product. So there's a lot of applications, some that we're already in pursuit of or have monetized and have partners with, and others that we just see, a really exciting future. But now with Chat-GPT, I think, it does have us, questioning some things, but also excited again about how we might be able to leverage all the insights and things that we've built and kind of fuse these together to make something really special for multifamily. So that's how I see it.
And I would say previously our NLG at first was in phase one was let's write about what Fiona's thinking, so people can understand it, not just have a dashboard with numbers they don't trust. So let's build some credibility. Phase two was now let's generate content that will be published online, but it needs to obey fair housing and different criteria like that. Phase three is almost going back to roots where we were. You for years, Reid, have wanted to build talking points into our report. So it was kind of odd for us as a company because we had Fiona's predictive algorithm with commentary, but anything on reporting, we had no NLG. And so it was all on our services team to provide that commentary. And obviously we could become far more efficient if we had our system doing that. So that's something that's been on the board for a while and has been slated to do this year. Now, as you're saying, I'll pass it to Victor and say, Victor, how do you want to communicate this as far as like when should we be careful about like leveraging another platform versus using our own? And then are there certain areas like phase one, phase two, phase three, where you would look at that versus sticking with homegrown or, whatever? You are always an early admirer of new technology, but you are also very quick to say like, let's wait until it gets X scale or to X point before we, explore it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting right now, especially as we use our NLG platform versus others, is that if you think about, and I'm going to stick to Chat-GPT since it's the new kid on the block. Chat-GPT is, you could say it's the new technology, but it's not really a technology per se. It's more like a product because Chat-GPT is built on top of the actual technology, which is GPT-3. GPT 3.5, or in this case, GPT 4. What happened is that just somebody at OpenAI thought about it's the equivalent of computers and programming existed since the 70s, but it wasn't until the 90s, as an example, that someone said, hey, we should bring this to the regular consumer. And so that's what ChatGPT is. It's just grabbing existing technologies and applying them in such a way that the average person can use it. And so we are already using a lot of these GPT technologies to enhance our processes, enhance our tools, our systems, and we know where to use it, where not to use it. We're using it as an example I can talk about multiple different aspects of where we're using it, but I don't think this is going to change much the way in which we take things. It's just going to make the possibilities better as the people start gaining more interest in the GPT technologies, because the more interest there is, the more investment there will be, and the more investment there will be, and there is, the more tools will exist that will help us expand our horizons even further. More than that, more than the technology itself, the technology is useless without the actual data helping to enhance its capabilities. And so if you actually go to ChatGPT right now, a quick example of how it's useless without the data, they have been adding multiple tweaks into the tool. But as an example of something that I could do before is I could go and tell it, hey, there's this URL, this website. I want you to summarize the article on this website. And then what would happen is that it would lead you to believe that it's actually going to the URL. It's actually summarizing the information, and it would just make you believe that you're actually reading summarized information. But later what people figured out is that it's actually not going to the URL. It's just looking at the URL itself, and from the URL itself, it's saying, hey, I think the website is probably this, and so I'm going to generate like some silly summary or explanation of what's going on when everything is false inside of it. So one of the tweaks that they implemented recently inside of ChatGPT, again, the consumer version of GPT, is that it now responds with, sorry, I'm not able to give you a response because I'm not able to browse the internet. And so there's multiple things that without the actual data to power the tool itself, it's worthless.
Yeah, well, and the way I take that is it's not good at telling you when it's not sure or it's wrong. Because, like, for example, in our executive channel the other day, I think it was Ryan that showed that it failed a accounting exam,
right?
And it's because it's not good with numbers, like adding, subtracting, that kind of thing. So I like the consumer facing version today. I feel like works well if it's like, I don't know, if you have simple questions that like the Google answer box would have normally answered for you. That's how I take it. Versus if you're doing deep dive research, it's less, I trust it less because of what you're saying, where it may not browse, or it may like use some bad information to write, or it's like in the accounting example, it just like says, oh, the answer is 42. And it's like, that's not at all like what EBITDA is or whatever. So
yeah. Another example, and this is a conversation that I had with Rita a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, is that there's a problem of people in elementary school, high school, university using the tool to generate their research papers or generate just their homework. And what's happening right now is there's a distinction from, this is my opinion, but there's a distinction between mediocre professors or teachers and the ones that are really good at what they do. From my perspective, the ones that are really good at what they do, they will embrace the tool completely, and they will realize that this is the way things are going to continue to move forward, similar to when the calculator started or when it was invented. People were like, okay, it's going to take all of our jobs. Obviously, that didn't happen. We don't want kids to use it because they're going to forget how to do math. Maybe so, but they have a lot more skills that we didn't used to have when during those times. And so what I think really good professors are going to do is they're going to have kids leverage the tool and teach them how to use it to its full potential. And that means knowing how to talk to it, how to feed it data, how to help them create some deductive reasoning. And so what's going to happen is that we as humans, we're going to become the quality assurance for the actual robots that are going to be doing the work. So we're going to ask robots to go and as an example, with Digible, hey, go and fix my marketing campaign. The robot's going to go do its things. By the way, there's another tool called Auto-GPT that we can also talk about, which is super interesting. but it's going to go and fix the marketing campaign according to it, and it's going to be up to us to simply at that point verify that the outcome is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going out and taking 2 hours to click around and verify numbers, it's just going to do everything but for you. And again, you just have to make sure that the numbers match up to what you expect.
Yeah, a little scary as I think about it, Reid. There's people predicting that within the next year, white collar work can either be reduced by 30% or enhanced by 30%. Or this is what they're predicting will happen. Either you argue that like, oh, you're going to cut labor force by 30% because of these tools, or you expect 30% more productivity, which is kind of like one of the trains you've been on with our own automation. This is just allowing it for other folks that weren't as focused on automation as we have been. Where I get worried about this is you know, a human does not love double checking. They don't love double check. Every time we've tried to add QA to our process, it's gone terrible because you just get so bored by seeing the same thing over and over and over. So I worry that then people will get lazy and just like, oh, I'll trust the machine, and next thing you know, you overspent by $45,000 this weekend, and like that's a big issue. So I have a trust issue with this particular when the machines are less on rails and they're more like open, and as we as a company maybe trying to leverage something early or adapt early versus it's tried and true and you even know that it can accidentally overspend by 45,000. But I don't know, Reid, where you want to take it next.
No, I think it's a great concern that you're not the only one to surface. I've read a similar concern in the Post, like the Washington Post and the New York Times. And there's a lot of platforms, you were starting to get at this, that are actually trying to do what David's describing but automate it. And the article I read in the Post was about the academic use case, and that I don't know if it was a specific school, but there was a school that a lot of the kids were using this to write their papers. And so the teachers were like, this is a real problem. Kids aren't doing the work, and it's obvious. And they actually failed, I think, one of the top 10 students at that school because they accused her of using, Chat-GPT or whatever, GPT, in order to write her paper. And she, said that isn't true. I didn't do that, and it became this big case and precedent, right, for this. And so then insert, I forget the name of the tech company, but they were like, well, we can actually solve this. Our platform will tell you whether that in fact was written by GPT or written by the student. And so they deployed it and they got a bunch of false positives and realized, including for her, that she actually did write the paper, it turned out, but that the accuracy of that platform itself was only 60 to 65%. They were advertising it at 90 to 95%. But you can see how problematic this is going to become and already has, as far as what you can trust, what you can't, whether it's saying strange things or whether it's used for different, like the white collar work or in the academic world. And I couldn't agree more that you're not going to have a bunch of that would almost feel like we're taking a step back 50 years, right, to have people just sitting around reading this stuff, deciding, whether it's got the tone that it's supposed to have and all that other stuff. So I think inevitably, I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle, but I think GPT is here to stay. And as you said, Victor, more money's going to go into it. So it's just going to get more and more advanced. And I guess you can only hope that the platforms that are there to help try and regulate it are also keeping pace. And the other interesting part here is that I think it was the New York Times that was talking about the dangers of it politically and how it could affect our psyche, and have people thinking about either brands or topics in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. Just how powerful it can be as far as shaping public opinion. And that's one of the bigger concerns or risk of a technology like this. And so then my question is, does the government at any point get involved with this technology? Because they've tried for the most part to stay away from the internet, right? It's like, there's no way to regulate this. Well, this is potentially as big, and maybe I'll be wrong, of a move forward in technology as the internet was in the 90s. And so they better start thinking sooner about how they're going to try to approach this. And will that change from one country to the next? Or is there going to be any kind of global alignment on how to approach this? Because that's just how powerful potentially this could become. As you mentioned, it's only going to get more and more sophisticated. So when people talk about the dystopian like robots and, droids and all this like controlling the world, it's probably not going to be the Terminator like picture. It's going to be something, I'll say, more subtle like this, that is taking in natural language processing, generating, and starting to mold, people's, thoughts, and certainly has huge, potential applications as far as the workforce at large. But I don't think we're understating this. I think this is as big of a disruption as we'll experience in tech for many, many years. But I don't know if you agree with that, Victor. But you see, obviously, there are some already big intersections, I think, that we're trying to figure out which street to turn on.
Right. I think, it's interesting for me to talk about or think about in this conversation here, because I don't think, again, there's multiple pieces going on here. Do I think Chat-GPT is going to change the world? No. Do I think the creation or the idea of Chat-GPT is going to change the world? Yes. And there's a distinction there because, again, Chat-GPT is just built in one simple technology, which is GPT, whatever version you want to call it. But there's a lot more.
Well, do you think GPT will change the world? Let's take chat out of it.
No, I don't think GPT
so you don't
will
think
change
this
the world.
technology will change the world?
No, I think just the perception of what artificial intelligence can do, because it's now available to the consumer, will change the world. As an example, again, Auto-GPT. Auto-GPT is a tool that is built on top of GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, same as Chat-GPT, but Auto-GPT is a tool that you tell it, hey, what's your goal? And then it tries to do everything that it can to fulfill the goal. So 2 different applications built on the same technology that have different goals in mind. One is to help you with research papers. One is to help you to better write something or analyze something or summarize something. The other one is built on around actually taking actions. And so the idea, so what I do think is going to change the world and is going to be the intersection between, I guess, past and future, is the consolidation of multiple different technologies. And I think one of them is one called LangChain, which, have you guys heard about that one before?
Not that, but Auto-GPT, just to be clear, you could say like, hey, I'm going on vacation, make an itinerary for me this weekend and book it. And Auto-GPT would make it happen versus Chat-GPT would just tell you, here's a good itinerary.
Exactly.
So just wanted to give an example, but go ahead with your other one that I don't
Exactly. know. So LangChain is a sample of a tool that, in this case, Auto-GPT was built from. So as again, Auto-GPT is super cool because it opened people's eyes to the possibility of what can be done with tools like LangChain. And what LangChain allows you to do is to create this pipeline with different tools and different data and different technologies that help somebody build what are called agents to fulfill a task. So as an example, Auto-GPT doesn't have a specific goal in mind. When you spin up your Auto-GPT bot, it just asks you, hey, what do you want to do? And you tell it, I want you to be a bot that helps me with vacation itineraries. And then it asks, okay, what is the actual goal you want me to fulfill? And then you tell it, I want a vacation to Spain. And then, okay, I'm going to go and do it. Whereas with LangChain, you can actually go and build an agent for whatever you want in the world. As an example, we could go and build an agent built with GPT, built with different database, built with the ability to browse the internet and multiple different things. All these things will come together with LangChain so that it goes and automates marketing campaigns, as an example. Not sure if that made sense.
Yeah, I got you. So let's hit predictions, meaning like, do you agree that which do you lean more towards, I guess? And then if you want to add on your own, you can. But are we more likely to reduce white collar workforce by 30% in the next year, or increase productivity of the white collar workforce by 30%? And do you think 1 year is too soon, or do you have a different timeline?
So to answer that question, I have to think about two things. What do I think is going to happen faster? Do I think that the creation of agents is going to outpace the learning of the human? Or do I think the human is going to adapt faster as the tools evolve? And I'm going to be extreme here, but I just based on survivability. What's the word? Survivability?
Sure. Yeah.
Survivability. People are not going to let themselves starve to death, because it's not like within the next year, as an example, we're going to start implementing the universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people don't want to lose their jobs, they're going to be forced, because they want to survive. They don't want to starve to death, and they want to continue to be able to be useful to the workforce. I think people are just going to become more productive, rather than people are going to lose their jobs because of automations.
Mm-hmm. Reid, do you?
I mostly agree with that when you say white collar. I don't know how broad you're using that definition, but I think when it comes to some of the customer support, that has a good chance of losing the 30% versus increasing like capacity. Some of this we both know is going to be dependent on those corporations, the big ones that are going to really drive this on what stance they take. But I think my fear would be, and now there's enough examples of this, like where customer support is bad and the damage that it can do to your brand and to your sales, that's a lot of trust you're putting in a new technology to say, let's go ahead and pull the trigger on 30% of our staff. So I think that it might be a slower transition. Not trying to be too convenient here, but you might see some staff reduction as well as an increase in capacity, which is the ultimate multiplier for operators. It's like, let's get rid of some people that we need to get rid of, or we can now with this, and let's also expect more from the people that stay.
My take is people are overhyping it, like anything, like change. They always overestimate what can happen in a year and underestimate in 10. So on the 10-year timeline, I totally think 30%, if not maybe 100%, like increase could happen. On the 1-year timeline, I don't think near 30% is going to happen, because not only do you have to prove the technology and as Victor said, enough agents or whatever for your applications you need to trust, but then you as a company need to be able to like facilitate it. So I could see more of the startup community leaning that direction, whether it's like pair programming with a bot or whatever. But on the human, like let's just use internet marketing, like a G5 or whoever is not going to move fast enough in the next year. There's too much at risk. But right, like it's the whole like, do you want to short a stock or invest in a stock? Like in this case, like it's just too much of a risk for it all to come crashing down if it overspends by $100,000 in a weekend or something. So don't, right? Instead, let someone else be the early adopter, cut their teeth on it, find the mistakes, and then you jump to it. And also the market conditions aren't going to change that much. Maybe if you're a company that's like running out of cash and you were big, like several hundred employees, we have no option but to try this. It's kind of like what we saw that happened with the pandemic, where it's like, okay, quickly we can all get to a remote culture fast because we have to. So I could see some companies that are kind of running out of cash take the leap because they have to, but not because they necessarily want to. And then those learnings could help the rest of us, if it works out.
I do think the tools are gonna definitely be created within the next year or two, so that at least 30% of computer work can be automated or made more efficient. But there's the aspect that you mentioned, David, of change management. I don't think humans are going to be able to adapt at the speed that they need to adapt in order to catch up to the technology that is being built. One quick example, you guys know that I'm in the short-term rental space outside of my 9 to 5. And so
you say.
What's up?
So you say.
One of the things that recently came up as an advent of this, AI revolution, there's a technology called Guest Guru. And what this tool does is it connects your Airbnb listings, as an example, so that all of your listing description, your rules, your property's location, and even custom FAQs that you want to add into the property, you connect it into the chats, or you add it as a co-host to the property itself. And whenever messages come in from a guest now, and we implemented it this weekend actually, because one of the guys that's helping us, he took vacation. So Olivia's going to be stuck with everything. My wife is going to be stuck with everything for the next 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try this tool and see how it works out. And we tried it over the weekend, and it's amazing. Like Olivia and I, funny enough, we were like, "Why do we need this guy for anymore?"
Yeah.
But he's actually helping us with a bunch of other stuff. So, and we're actually gonna shift his work now towards other responsibilities because I'm gonna assume 90% of the guest interaction, it was already almost fully automated, but now it's gonna be like that remaining piece that was very tedious is gonna be even more so automated. And it's like very nuanced questions such as, "Hey, where do I park? I'm having trouble with the door. I can't get in. How do I don't know, like, how do I connect to the internet? What are the detailed instructions for me to, I don't know, do whatever?" Like, you just started as an FAQ. And what's also super interesting is that it doesn't just give you a canned response of what we wrote as a suggested answer. We tell the bot, "Hey, we want you to respond in a friendly tone and make a joke every now and then, blah, blah, blah." And the bot actually goes and interacts with the guest like a human was. So for all intents and purposes, guests don't even know that they're dealing with a bot. Like, they think it's actually a human.
Well, and I love that you were using the word change management because, one, Victor, I didn't know you knew that term, so nice job.
Shows you how much he thinks you do.
It's just a very like MBA sort of term, so I just whatever. But anyways, as you mentioned, it's like I think about Excel and how easy it is to dedupe two different data sets in Excel. Like, oh, this exists, go ahead and dedupe. But how many times I've seen our staff, like, which are fairly tech savvy people, manually deduping because they don't know the command to like go ahead and do it, or they don't trust it to not like lose some information.
Right.
Basically, that almost always happens, and rarely do I see someone actually using the dedupe function. That's how I view this, where it's like spreadsheets have been around since before much of our staff has been born, and now they're still like not fully leveraging it. I think that's going to happen with any of these AIs. One, because of trust, or two, because of knowledge. Now, the purpose-built ones that someone like yourself, sort of at the top of your organization of short-term rentals, you're applying it, and so now you're like, great, I did it for us. So I think that's what it's going to take, is like that sort of leader and visionary to see it and put it in practice, versus expecting your frontline folks to be like, great, I'm going to automate my job off of this.
Right. But talking about change management, there's also, there's a company, I don't even know which company it is, but there's an article or a thread somewhere on the internet where the CEO was like, geez, like, I am aware of the capabilities of this new AI technology, and so therefore I'm going to change the targets of every one of my employees to be 50% higher.
Right.
And so with the technology, I don't even know what their jobs are, but if he set that goal, it's maybe possible. I don't know. I'm going to assume that it's possible. But just because there's now an expectation that everything should be like the performance should be 50% higher, people, and their pay is going to stay the same, people are not happy. And so there's also that aspect, the social aspect to manage, which is also super interesting of how that's going to develop.
Totally. Yeah. It's like if you move the goalpost, anybody new coming in won't realize the old goalpost, and they may do whatever they have to do to get it done. But the people that have been there don't like the goalpost is moved.
Right. Even if it's the same amount of work, but it's just the psychological impact of knowing that it's that maybe the company's making 50% more and I get nothing. But as an example, at Digible, we have different ways of managing that. But if that company was managing or doing yearly raises, but then everybody else in the competition was doing the exact same thing without raises, then obviously that company would eventually die because of the margin squeeze.
But it's the same amount of hours that they were working before, and that's what you have to remind them of. Because my analogy with David has always been like, what it required to make a college like Power 5 program like on a 40-yard like dash is not what it is today. Like 20, 30 years ago. It is what it is, and to me, the output now of like, let's just say our front line at the agency can't stay the same for the next 30 years, but the hours will. I mean, in theory, right? Obviously, we've given them a 4-day work week, but I think you just have to communicate this as part of the evolution of business and like people's output. It's happening all over the world as far as productivity is going up,
right?
And pay is staying the same. But you're working the same hours, so why should I pay you more?
Right.
Well, this is a great conversation. We do have to wrap up. We're getting kicked out of the room, but maybe we'll check back in like another quarter and then see how our attitude of it has changed. And heck, has Digible seen any benefit of using it outside of meaning using these off-the-shelf tools versus what we've built in-house. And because we're generally like to think of ourselves as quick moving, but at the same time, as we're getting bigger, it is harder, more nerve-wracking to make some of these moves if we don't have someone senior watching it.
Yeah, well, bringing in that all of that back full circle to Digible Technologies, Fiona, I don't think much is going to change as far as processes and systems. We're just going to continue to innovate, look for new technologies to make us faster, better, stronger, and continue to plow ahead and make customers happy.
Yeah, I totally disagree. But we'll save that for the next podcast.
Well, at least I was talking about the technology department. Maybe not maybe. Things will definitely change for the agency side. They will have to. There will have to be a mindset shift, I believe. Maybe you still disagree with that, but
we'll use that as a springboard for the next podcast when Victor's here in late June.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Victor. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you guys for inviting.